Welcome back to your next lesson. This lesson is a little bit different to what we had been doing previously. We were starting to write our introductions, but before we get on to writing our main paragraphs, we need to look at some vocabulary. Yeah. Now, when you are writing about charts, graphs, process diagrams, flows, really what you're describing or what you're going to be talking about are two things. Things that are different and things that are the same. Things that are different and things that are the same. So basically we're talking about change or things that are not changing. Yeah? So there are lots of great vocabularies, words that we can use to describe things that change. Now, here are 4 verbs. The first verb we have is to change. To change. I want to change this pen for this pen. I want to change them. Okay? So change is very, very easy. Change means it changes. It becomes something else. And that actually leads us to our next verb, to become. To become is another verb that describes change. You and me, we are becoming older. Yeah? We are becoming older. The weather outside is becoming warmer. Okay? Now, become here really is a word that does describe change, but become describes what we call gradual change. It's not something that changes instantly, it's something that changes constantly over a very, very long period of time. Now, I am becoming older, but I have been becoming older since the day I was born. Yeah? Every day I am changing, I am becoming older. Yeah? So that's a great word to use if you need to describe something that changes very, very slowly over a long period of time. Okay? Now, get is another verb that is great. If you can use get already, brilliant. Get is a verb that just describes things that change. About 90% of the time, when we use get, we're talking about something that is changing, a change of state, a change of situation. Now, I am becoming older, but I can also say, oh, I'm getting older. Yeah, I'm getting older. Which has a slightly different meaning to becoming older, because becoming is describing the constant change. I'm getting older is just describing a feeling I'm having right now at this moment in time. Oh, I'm getting old. Yeah? Go. We can use go to describe change. Go. You know, go away. A great phrasal verb, to go away. I want you to change from being here to not being here. Yeah? But I can say, oh, I am going bald. Or my hair is going bald. Or you might say my hair is going grey if you are getting older. Yeah? Okay, so there are some great verbs that you can use to help describe change in different ways. But there are so many more verbs that we can use, so let's explore lots of vocabulary. So let's take a look at some different vocabulary, some great verbs that can be used to describe graphs, charts, flow diagrams, maps even. Okay, so here's just 5. We'll look at some more in a few minutes, but we have to adapt, to adjust, to modify, to tweak or to transform. Great words, great vocabulary. Okay. Now they all mean changing something, but they all mean change in different ways. If you remember, we spoke about become. I am becoming older. Become is describing gradual changes over a long period of time. Different words mean something different. So to adapt something. If you adapt something, you are changing it from doing one thing into doing another thing. Or you're changing it from one thing into another. So, I don't know, an example of adapting something might be perhaps if you are describing a map that has buildings and you have two maps. There's a building here that was a house. The building still exists, but it has become a cafe. So the building has been adapted, okay, because it has changed from one thing to another. It was a house, now it's a cafe. So you would say the building has been adapted, or it was adapted, yeah? So adapt describes change from one thing into another thing. Okay. To adjust something. If we adjust something, we're making a small change to make something better. Okay? Just a small change, but a small change can make something much better. We adjust it. Okay? If we modify something, we make a small change to something which makes it different. So we're not necessarily just making it better, we're making it different. Yeah? If you tweak something, tweak is very similar to adjust. You are making it better. Okay? And transform. Transform is similar to modify, but modify is a small change which makes something different. To transform something is a big change which makes it different. So it makes it completely different. Yeah. So if you think about how you might use these verbs when you are describing some of the changes in your graphs, charts and process diagrams. Let's take a look at some other verbs, and let's start with to revolutionize or to disrupt something, which in today's modern era of technology, to disrupt something has become a very common phrase. If you think of organizations or companies like Uber, Uber disrupted or completely changed dramatically the whole taxi industry in the cities that they operate in. The old way of doing things was completely gone, and there's a new way of doing things with your Uber application. Yeah. So if we're going to talk about things that are being revolutionized or disrupted, we're talking about great, dramatic changes. Okay? And that's a great way to describe these kinds of things. If something is great and dramatic, it can be a revolution or a disruption. Yeah? Convert. Convert, again, is describing big changes, but big changes that don't necessarily change the fundamentals of something. And a good example of this is petrol and electric cars. The car is still the car. You still get in your car and you still drive your car. The car still performs the same purpose, but it's no longer your petrol car, or rather your car is no longer using petrol, it's using electric to do the same job. So convert is really describing these big changes. Yeah, there's a big change from petrol to electric, but in essence the thing still does the same, performs the same function. Okay. And finally, to evolve. To evolve is another great verb, a little bit like become, because evolve describes slow, gradual changes. Just like, I am becoming older. Evolve is even slower and even longer periods of time. So become is quite slow, gradual change. Evolve is even slower than become. Obviously, all of these verbs have to be used correctly. So you need to use the correct tense of the verb. And you need to know how the verb works within a sentence, with prepositions, etc., etc. So you can't just use one of these verbs. You have to make sure you're going to use these verbs correctly. So you should practice writing sentences with all of these verbs and other verbs. Okay? Now, as well as describing change, what we can do with these same verbs is describe how things stay the same. Let's take a look at how we do that. So I'm going to give you a couple of examples of how we can use these very same verbs to describe or talk about something that stays exactly the same. So we're not really talking about something that is changed right now, we're talking about something that hasn't changed or wasn't changed. Okay? So I'm only going to give you a few examples just to show you. So we've got the verb to adapt, to convert and to transform. Now our grammar in this case is very, very simple. We're going to use the past simple tense and we're going to create a negative sentence using not. Okay, so instead of using adapt in a positive sentence, so I don't know, the room was adapted to make it larger. Okay, we're going to say the room was not adapted. Okay, the same with convert. You know, if we're talking about a car, maybe we have a car that was converted from petrol to electricity. But then there's a car that wasn't converted. So we can say it was not converted. Okay? Or it was not transformed. Yeah? So the grammar is very, very simple. You need simple past, past simple. You need not to create a negative sentence to negate the sentence. And instead of just saying it stayed the same or it was not changed, okay, you can use any of these verbs that we've spoken about and just use them in a simple past negated sentence to talk about how it stayed the same instead of changed. Yeah, because you will have to talk about things that have not changed and things that have stayed the same, as well as things that do change. So these verbs are great either way. You just use the verb in a positive sense or a negative sense. Okay. Now, finally, before we finish this lesson, I want to take a look at some great phrasal verbs that you can use to talk about change. There's only a few phrasal verbs here, but you don't need lots of phrasal verbs. If you use too many, it will not sound very natural. And in your writing, you probably only need one or two phrasal verbs. And when you're describing change, then here are three great phrasal verbs. To turn into, to put in, to take out. Okay, so let's just have a look at what these phrasal verbs actually mean. So, to turn into is a phrasal verb that describes changing the purpose of something. So let's say a room in a house. Perhaps you're in a bedroom, but you want to change the bedroom into a bathroom. You want to turn it into a bathroom. So you're changing the purpose of something. Yeah? Okay. To put in. To put in means there isn't something there at the moment and you want to put something in. So if we take the example of our bathroom, we're going to turn our bedroom into a bathroom. So that means I need to put in a shower. I also need to take out or remove the wardrobes. Okay, so to put in means to add something, and to take out means to remove something. So if you think about how you can talk about adding things and taking things out, adding and removing things within your charts and things that you're looking at. Sometimes things are added, sometimes things are taken away. And you can use these phrasal verbs to help you describe those. Yeah? And turn into is all about change, dramatic change. Okay? So, I hope I've given you some ideas on vocabulary that you can use to describe how things change.